Hello scribes, welcome back to my channel. I'm Pika Lee, and today I've got a video for you that is going to be one that's kind of hard for me to talk about today because I once was this person, a new writer. And I have a great video for you today that hopefully helps neutralize some of the high expectations that new writers have. And I hope that talking about some of the mistakes that I personally made that I've curated on this list, you too will be able to avoid them and make yourself possibly some good connections with established writers the correct way. You see, I come across forums and chats where there are writers, screenwriters in particular, who are mingling with some of the up-and-coming ones. But unfortunately, they're painfully new. And unfortunately, that leaves a lot of the other writers who have established and taken their time and enjoyed their journey from new writer to more established and more experienced writer. They are sort of fed up with us by the end of most of the topics that we talk with them about. So I thought it would be great to talk about some things that even I did as a new writer, and hopefully we can stop them in their tracks. Hashtag don't follow in my footsteps. So hit that like button, subscribe, and let's get settled in to talk about mistakes that all new writers make. Let's talk about the first major thing we need to stop, and that's having your family and friends read your stuff. Now, I know this sounds completely silly. Why would I tell you to have someone who is closest to you, who won't hurt your feelings, who is going to be as delicate as possible, who is going to be as loving and caring about your future, read your work? Well, first of all, most people don't really want their family to read their work anyway. But friends, as it happens, are pretty much the first person we kind of turn to. Someone who's kind of similar or just knows us really well. But the reason why I want you to stop doing it, at least for now, is because if they're not your target audience, they shouldn't be looking at it. You're writing a screenplay that is horror and you know your mom likes all comedies, you don't really want to send her any of your work that has horror content in it because she's not the audience who wants to actually engage in that sort of story. So you're not going to get really good feedback about it. The other thing is, most times our family and friends are going to be pretty polite. They are kind of going to be afraid to hurt our feelings, and if they're not afraid to hurt your feelings, they might actually end up scaring you away from any other family members seeing your work. You don't want to keep that habit forever where you never show anybody anything, because as I've said in another video before, you definitely want to put your work out there. And if you haven't seen my Before You Put Your Work Online video, go check that out. It's got some valuable tips about why I didn't write for years after putting my work online for the first time as a young writer. Also, if you don't want to go back and look at it right now or check the tagged video, you can always subscribe so that you can check that video out later at your convenience. Now, part of having them read it is because you want professional feedback. They're not going to have professional feedback unless they're a writer. And if they're not reading stories in the range that you're writing in, or watching movies in the type of thing that you are actually writing in, they're not going to really know what's working and what's not working for you so that you can change. Now, when you're a new writer, this is a really critical stage for you. You're in development, and a lot of people don't tell you how long you're going to be in development for. But I know the truth. You're going to be in development for quite a while. So you want to make sure that as you're building your confidence and your voice and your development style for storytelling, that you're handing it off to people who can give you valuable information about how to actually improve the writing. They're most likely going to tell you surface things. They enjoyed it, or there was a missing comma, or there was something grammatically wrong. But they won't be able to show you the things that you'll actually need to take care of. And if they do find the big plot holes, that just means that they're not going to be able to tell you how to fix it. And telling someone there's a hole right here doesn't actually tell them how do I patch that hole. So that is the value in just going to someone who is going to give you the proper feedback that you need, or at least be able to critique it in a way that might help you actually develop your writing skills. Speaking of putting your work online, that is a number 2 mistake that I absolutely did. Now remember I mentioned there was a video where I put my work online and I did not write for a number of years afterwards because my confidence was sort of struck down. Now I already have a lot of confidence sort of issues about what I'm really good at. So for me, this was something that I really struggled with internally, and I didn't properly talk about it for a very long time. So that one incident online actually scared me away from the one passion I have in life, which is writing. And much like how I critique myself harshly, I got a harsh critique, but I do mention it in the video, so again, check that out. My practice for putting stuff online is being cautious about all of the risk factors of feedback being not what I want, development, critiques not actually coming from seasoned professional writers online, and then of course there is the copyright portion. You want to make sure wherever you place your free content that is a project you may want to monetize later, that you're being cautious where you put it and who retains ownership. Once it's published online, that's kind of a real publish. I mean, it may be a self-publishing moment, but some actual traditional places will consider it out and about and free to everyone else to just take and copy. So they won't be able to monetize it. And that's something that you should be highly aware of when you put your work online. The next thing that seems to irk a lot of these seasoned writers would be not doing your research of the industry beforehand. Now, granted, there are forums and places where you can chat and network and groups that you can join to ask all these questions to people who have had the experience. I mean, we're kind of in this world of, Amazon Prime is sort of instant. So because we like instant gratification, we are used to someone just supplying the answer without doing the research ourselves. This is not a good practice for us because much of the industry is knowing before you get to the professionals on your own. And that's of course done with mentorship or doing your own sort of background research on the person, the place that you're trying to get your script placed to or your writing given to. Research all of this information yourself. And that includes how you can send it to people. Please don't go online and ask people, who can you connect me with? A producer, can you give me a phone number of someone high of importance? You've made a film or published a book. Can you get me in touch with your agent? You don't want to ask questions like that because first of all, you haven't worked for it, so it looks pretty lazy. Secondly is that you didn't do your research enough to know the process of how you get an agent or how you get those connections. And that looks really green. So if you look really green, which basically just means really new, you start to show that you are not quite developed enough for someone to take you on as a serious writer. Serious writers are going to have a lot of telltale signs that they are very seasoned and very ready, and that also shows in the actual project itself. So it's going to show itself in your work. And if you are not at that level yet, you probably won't need those contacts anyway. Besides, producers and directors, they don't want to have to work on building you as an actual great writer. You should come with that experience and that skill already. There's no one that has enough time to actually put in the work to develop you as a professional writer because everyone's already very busy trying to freelance their own work. Producers are trying to keep the money flowing, keep the movies pumping out of the system, and finding as many scripts and screenwriters who can get it done for them so they can pass along and get this greenlit. And if they have to take the time to actually develop you, that sort of takes a lot more time in an already very, very time-consuming business. It takes a lot of time already for even seasoned writers to develop a script to exactly what is needed from a producer and director and a studio. So imagine how much longer it's going to take for all of that to be done for you to make your first feature film. And of course, there is the problem that time is money, and money doesn't come often. That's kind of a reason why there's not enough scripts being produced today. Very little percentage actually make it to the screen. So there's not going to be a lot of people waiting around to develop people who are new to the business, and that's why you have to do your own research. Sorry. Hopefully my videos does a good job of catching you up to speed so that you understand the business and you are being developed as we work along this whole amazing industry together. Another hot button is, will you read my script? A lot of seasoned writers will absolutely want to help you out and read your script, but a lot of newbies are not really good at taking critique. And it hurts their feelings because they are not yet ready to have the feedback, that they are not yet skilled in the trade yet. And for a lot of seasoned writers, they don't want you to hit them up to ask these same questions over and over again. You know, can you read my script? Can you get me an agent? Can you get it produced? Because if you think about it, you're asking your direct competition. And I don't like to say competition often because we shouldn't be competition. But you have to think of it in their perspective. We're all freelancers vying for the same job. And if you're going to ask them for valuable amounts of critique and time out of their day, you'd better be serious about taking their critiques and being able to take a note, because notes are going to be rampant in this field. Notes are given. You're always going to get a note from a studio, from a producer, from a director, from probably an actor at some point. There's going to be notes coming at you from all angles, and you have to be okay with adjusting. That's a very big deal in our industry, and if you can't do that, you might want to produce your own stuff separately, so you have the fullest control that you can. Just remember, this is a business, so we have to abide by things that keep the business running and appease everyone who needs to make a buck off of it, because it's not just you who's making a buck off of it. It's now a whole crew who's going to help you get your story onto screen. So just remember to be grateful. Another thing that we need to stop doing is keeping our writing to ourselves. Now, I did say don't give it to family and friends, but I didn't say never send it out to anyone. As I mentioned before, basically, you want to send it out to someone who is in your field, possibly the target audience. If you keep it to yourself for a very long time, what ends up happening is you stunt your growth, actually. You don't have eyes on it to tell you what's wrong. And then because you don't have those eyes, you don't know what's wrong. And yes, while you can go to classes to get that knowledge, you still have to have a peer review something to see if you're correctly using that new tool and skill. And that moves me into the next part, which is expecting high reviews of your work. Don't expect anything, to be honest. At this point in your stage, in your career, you are new, you are learning, enjoy that process. And if you have a fixed mindset about how your growth is, you immediately need to learn to gravitate toward a very much growth mindset, because to me, the biggest thing was if you have a fixed mindset about how your work is and you have high expectations that you have to be great because you love it and you are probably a really good storyteller, you enjoy stories, you know stories, or at least you think you know stories, and you have that high expectation that just knocks you over. You want to build up that strength to make sure any sort of information that comes into you gets processed right, and it just helps you become a better writer. Because most people aren't giving you tips or feedback to make you a bad writer. That's just insane. So take what they say with a grain of salt for sure. Make sure you take in all of their critiques and their feedback and figure out and parse which notes are going to be the most beneficial to your story, what feels right. And if you aren't feeling like any of those notes make sense for you, have someone else read it who is in, again, the same audience or is interested in that same sort of style of writing, and find out if they give you similar or the same type of critiques or very different critique. Remember that everybody is going to give you an opinion based off of their taste. So if you don't have the same taste as them, you're giving it to the wrong audience. And if you do have the same taste as them, most likely you'll agree with the comments and you'll see their point and their side of it. Also figure out why they feel that way about the comments they've given you, just so that you know if you implement them, they make sense again for your project. You don't want to take anything that you don't feel right about. And I always say make a copy of your actual project. Keep making project drafts, and any changes that you make that you don't feel right about, you still have the past draft. The final ultimate newbie move is to send your script out before it is ready. I want to shake myself for the amount of times that I've done this, because I truly thought that it was kind of a one and done deal when I was younger. I would write just one draft, send it out to as many people because it was brilliant, and I most likely would have to fight off the agents and probably be the youngest screenwriter ever. And then I realized as I got older that I didn't know jack about story, and all of the courses that I've taken have proven I didn't know anything about story because I just didn't analyze certain things correctly, and I didn't know a lot of the rules to develop myself as a writer. It wasn't my fault. I had high expectations because I didn't know anything about the field. So again, that's why I'm making these videos to teach you about how the field works and how to develop yourself with a good foundation that you don't have to change, that will stay solid for you to build upon for later. All of this is to make you a better storyteller. And being the best writer means knowing that you're going to need multiple passes, and knowing that you're going to need to really do the work to develop your script. Scripts take a very long time, like I've said previously, to develop before it gets greenlit. And that's actually after you've done already quite a lot of drafts. So imagine that you're going to need to do this many drafts, and then you go to a studio and they still ask for all these drafts. And they pretty much chose you because you had a handle on story. So imagine most of us who are only doing like one draft. These are some of the biggest reasons that I noticed in myself, and I have been wanting to share for quite a long time. I'm really glad that I got to share this with you. These are some of the biggest things that I have done in the past that have created rifts between me and seasoned writers, and also things that I have seen online that take place almost daily. So I want to make sure you don't fall into those pitfalls and become one of those who isn't going to snag a mentor because you haven't done some of the research or you haven't learned how to take a good note. I hope that helped you out today, scribes. If you liked this sort of content, give me a thumbs up. It helps me know that you like this sort of topic and you want more. And if you subscribe down below, you won't miss any of the new videos that I put out for you. Happy writing, and I'll see you on the next one.